proposed expenditure be agreed to. I give the call to the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My electorate of Lindsay is in the outskirts of Sydney, and being in the outskirts of Sydney, one of the biggest challenges we have is that 2/3 of our working population have to commute every single day for jobs. One third all the way into the city and 1/3 into Greater Western Sydney. Now, the Abbott government is already contributing a lot of resources and a lot of funding to assist the northwest and the southwest growth sector, $3.5 billion in fact, to actually build some major construction work that will be in the southwest of Sydney. Now, I also have within the electorate of Lindsay one of the colleges of the TAFE New South Wales, the Western Sydney Institute. Now, the Western Sydney Institute of TAFE has some 94,000 students in it that they provide every year qualifications within Australian frameworks. They also offer the open training, distance learning opportunities for people there as well. So as Western Sydney grows, there's a growing demand on workplace jobs, actual jobs that are going to provide solutions for people to be ready to go, so vocational style of jobs. But the Western Sydney Institute of TAFE is also really wonderful of how it works with the University of Western Sydney of providing those crucial gateway courses. So people who have not necessarily got the best UAI can gateway from TAFE into university, which I think is a really fabulous initiative that these two training organisations do together to provide vocational outcomes for people right across Western Sydney. Now, when we look at all this together, my question to the Minister is why is the government extending Commonwealth subsidies to provide subsidies to private universities and the non-university higher education institutions?
I thank the member for Lindsay. The question is that the proposed expenditure be agreed to. I give the call to the Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, for the opportunity to comment on the member for Lindsay's contribution. She has identified a very excellent part of the higher education reforms that we are proposing, and that is to give more young people from areas like Western Sydney the opportunity to use different pathways into higher education. Now, the Commonwealth Grant Scheme has been applied to universities, the 39 universities, for many decades, and the government's decision has been that we want to expand that to the non-university higher education providers, many of which are very high quality and are offering as good, if not better, courses and career opportunities for young people. When we come to decide the amount that should be funded to those different institutions that are non-university, the percentage that we pay them might well be lower than what universities are paid, and that is why we have a working group advising us on what, for example, that percentage should be, because universities do research. Being a university, one of the definitions is that they are research as well as teaching, whereas a lot of the non-university higher education providers like TAFEs, they don't do research, they do teaching and do it very well. Now, the ones in Western Sydney, like the TAFE that the member for Lindsay talked about, will be big winners from the government's higher education reforms. They'll be big winners because some of their courses will be funded under the new demand-driven system for diplomas and sub-bachelor courses, so there'll be an injection of funds to TAFEs through that method. They'll also be winners because, for the first time, they'll be able to access the Commonwealth Grant Scheme, and that will give them an opportunity to get an injection of funds that way. And TAFEs around Australia, certainly in my state of South Australia, the state government there has been cutting TAFE funding. So they, for example, have very much welcomed the decision by the government to expand that. And I was very pleased to see in the Australian Financial Review on Monday an article by Tim Dodd about this very subject that the member for Lindsay raises, headed "SA Labor to back coalition on funding." The South Australian Higher Education Minister Gail Gago said on Saturday the federal government's plans to recognise and fund sub-bachelor degrees delivered by the SA TAFE system was welcome, and so of course the same thing would apply to the TAFEs in Greater Western Sydney. She said the extension of funding of sub-bachelor programs to TAFE and other registered higher education providers provides an opportunity for TAFE to access Commonwealth funding for its diploma and advanced diploma courses on an equal footing with universities. TAFE SA already works closely with a number of universities in terms of providing opportunities for students to transfer to university and have recognition for their studies in TAFE, and the recognition and funding of the sub-bachelor programs delivered by TAFE is welcome. So this is not a Liberal minister, Mr Chairman. This is a Labor state government in the state from which the member for Adelaide, the Shadow Minister, comes from. I don't think from the same faction, though. I think Gail Gago's in the left and the member for Adelaide's in the right. I'm not sure, but they don't tend to talk to each other that closely in South Australia, but I'm sure the member for Adelaide can inform us. In any event, this is a state Labor government, Madam Speaker, a state Labor government, Mr Chairman, I should say, who is supporting the federal government's proposals. And why is she doing that? Well, because they're good proposals. They are very good. And Gail Gago has worked out that what the government is doing is expanding opportunity to a great deal more students around Australia to get a higher education qualification. And this will mean that students in Western Sydney, in Greater Western Sydney, will have the chance to go to university, to get a degree or a diploma or a course, and then go on to earn 75% more over their lifetime, $1 million more than people without a higher education qualification. Now, in the time available to me, I won't try and start a new subject, but I might get the chance to comment on it in a minute, Mr Chairman. But there are many, many Australians who recognise that they are pleased to support students at university by subsidising their education. At the moment, they're subsidised at 60%. And I think, as only 40% of Australians have a university degree, it means that a great majority of the population are subsidising students to get the chance to earn 75% more than them over a lifetime. It is a generous act on behalf of the Australian taxpayer, and rather than whinging about it, as the member for Adelaide does, she should be thanking the taxpayers of Australia for the subsidies that they provide to students around the country.
The question is that the